Hello everyone, so I'm here to do the last video for Europe for the Read Around the World challenge, and that is what I'm going to be calling the Atlantic Archipelago, which basically is Ireland and the UK, but I'm going to divide the UK into its own countries. So yeah, there are a lot of books that I have read from these places, as you can imagine, so I'm just going to highlight a few of them that I think are worth your time. So first I wanted to mention a non-fiction, and that's Don't Touch My Hair by Emma Dabiri. So Emma Dabiri is a Black Irish woman, and she talks from a very scientific point of view about Black women's hair, the maths of it, the history of it, the symbolism of it, and she goes very deep into some socio-political questions, like why do they think that an African woman or a Black woman taking 5 hours to do her hair is a waste of time because it's not productive according to Western standards, but it's actually like the symbolism of it means so much to these people. So what are they expected to do with that extra time that they have if they don't do that? Things like that. Also, like the different styles, how like the history of each of them, and they are very complex, and there is like a lot of actual math going into them, and like it's all very fascinating, and I really enjoyed this. So I would recommend. I think it's a great book, and it kind of, I mean, she is an Irish woman, so it's a little bit of a different take on Ireland. Then from the classics, I will definitely recommend some of the Oscar Wilde plays. It doesn't really matter that much which one you choose. I think The Importance of Being Earnest is probably my favorite, but I think any of them will give you a sense of how funny and relevant still Oscar Wilde is. I'm not a very classics person, and Oscar Wilde is one of my few exceptions. So yeah, I think he's very funny and very brilliant, so I would recommend reading him in general. I also want to talk about The Green Road by Anne Enright. I really liked this one when I read it. It's about a family that goes together because someone died, and all the messed up family dynamics and the ups and downs of families, and I think it was very representative of how families are and how families work in general. Like, you have people that you enjoy spending time with, and you have people that you really have problems with, and all of those dynamics, I think they were very well represented. With that said, I have also read Actress by Anne Enright, and I hated it, so maybe, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about her as an author, but that The Green Road specifically I really enjoyed, so I would recommend. Another quite famous and loved author from Ireland is Emma Donoghue, and I have read The Pool of the Stars. I haven't read Room, but I have watched the movie, and I haven't read The Wonder or any of her other books. But The Pool of the Stars was really good, I think. It's a historical fiction. I don't think it's particularly literary, but it's a good historical fiction about this hospital ward that is for women that are pregnant or are delivering that have this influenza flu in the early 1900s. So the combination of those two things, because they are not supposed to be put with the other pregnant women because then they would infect them with the flu, but they are also not supposed to go with the flu patients because they are already weak because they're giving birth, and so they don't want to put them in such a tricky position in a flu part of the world. So they have this specialized part for them in the hospital, and you see kind of the dynamics of how that worked, because some of them were not married, some of them were married with abusive husbands, some of them were happily married, and it just looks at that balance of of the Irish culture and how women are treated, and also we see it mostly from the point of view of the staff that works there, which is overworked, underpaid, all of the things which relatable to today, I guess, as well. But yeah, I think it was a very good historical fiction, and it was very well written. And kind of in that note as well, I would cautiously recommend The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. John Boyne is a little bit of a controversial author. I think he defended J.K. Rowling about her transphobic comments, so John Boyne is a tricky person to recommend, but yeah, The Heart Invisible Furies was a very good book. It's about a gay man in Ireland and all the hardships he goes through from before he's born, because he's born from a single mother that abandoned him because she didn't have a choice at the time, Catholic Ireland, all of that. And it's very all-encompassing and very immersive, very you just want to keep reading and see what's happening. It's quite a big book, but it's still like very absorbing. So I think it is a good book, but I don't think that I will put doubts the fact that John Boyne doesn't seem to be the best person. So you can decide by yourself what you want to do about that. Then the next one I want to talk is one that I actually put in my favorite books of 2022, and it's The Opposite of Butterfly Hunting by Evanna Lynch, which is a memoir by Evanna Lynch. Evanna Lynch played Luna Lovegood in the Harry Potter movies, and before she made those movies, she suffered with anorexia, and this is a memoir about how she arrived to that situation and what prompted her to do that, and how addictive it is in a way. And it is very well written. First of all, she's a very good writer, very poetic and very artsy. But also the way that she talks about anorexia, it just made me understand so much more about how that illness happens and how it develops and how difficult it is to fight it, and how the current methods of fighting it are 100% not what it should be. So yeah, it was very enlightening, and I really enjoyed it. And then the last one I want to recommend is The Colony by Audrey Magee, which was also in my favorites of 2022. And this one is just very, very good. I think it should have won the Booker. It didn't. Whatever. But it is about this island in Ireland that speaks Irish, and it's one of the last places in which Irish is like the main language in the island. And we follow this British painter that moves into that island because he wants to, retreat from the world and all of that, and he's not welcomed by another person there, a French person that he's a linguist, and he came to the island to study Irish, and he's very protective of the Irish language. So when this man from Britain comes in with only his English, expecting to be 100% understood and doesn't even take into account stuff, this French person gets really mad. And it's about how these two people are trying to gatekeep the lives of the Irish people without asking them really what they want. Some of them want to speak Irish, some of them want to speak English, some of them just don't care. And it's just like, it's about how it makes you think about how in general colonized countries, which also applies to other colonized countries, but Ireland was colonized by the British at some point, how they make decisions for them, even when they're trying to be good about it. They just don't know what they're doing. They forget to ask the locals what they want, and I think that's very poignant point to make. I think that happens a lot in Africa, for example. People go there with these NGOs and knowing what they need, and they just don't ask the local people what they want. So that was very poignant. And yeah, overall I think the book is just really masterfully done. I read the audiobook and it was great. So yeah, I think it's brilliant, and I think everyone should read it. So yeah, those were my recommendations for Ireland. You might see Sally Rooney is not part of it because I didn't like Normal People. I think it was just one of those millennial books that think they're very profound and they don't really say anything special. So that's my take on Sally Rooney. Sorry. Then for Northern Ireland, I have read couple of books, and I haven't. In the challenge I'm doing, it doesn't divide into the sub-countries, so I might have read something else from Northern Ireland or Wales, and I don't know that is from those countries. But I did my best to research the books I've read from the UK and try to divide it. So yeah, from Northern Ireland, I've read a couple of things. I've read Milkman by Anna Burns, which I really enjoyed. So Milkman is a stream of consciousness about this girl in Northern Ireland that is kind of stalked by one of the people in the town, the milkman, and she tries to run away, and it's very, like, you have to get into the rhythm of the book because it's stream of consciousness, so it doesn't have a lot of punctuation, it just has a flow, and you have to get into that flow, and once you do that, it's amazing. But if you don't manage to get into the flow, I understand that it doesn't work for people, but for me it worked and it was great. So yeah, I would recommend. And then the other one is not exactly from Northern Ireland, I think, but it's Say Nothing by Patrick Radden-Keefe, which is a non-fiction about the Troubles. And Patrick Radden-Keefe makes non-fiction that is really readable and really, it's like narrative, and it's not, it reads like a thriller. Seriously. It focuses on certain people on the movement, and it kind of builds their story, and you want to know what happened to those people. So it's very, very good, and I think that if you are interested in the history of Northern Ireland, you probably want to read this. I don't think that Patrick Radden-Keefe is Irish or Northern Irish, but I think he still talks about this topic very well, and I think it's also quite well researched. For Wales, the only book I think I have read from Wales is The Fortune Man by Nadifa Mohammed, which is about a Somali guy that is living in Wales, in Cardiff, and something happens, like a killing happens near his area, and they think he did it. So it's about what happened to this man and how he was treated by the justice system, even though he said he never did it. And it's based on a real case. I read it for the Booker Prize a few years ago, so I have a full review of it. I'll link it down below. I thought that the book was interesting in concept and in themes, but I think the pacing for it didn't work for me. I liked it, but I didn't love it. But yeah, I would be interested in reading some more from Wales. So if you know about some author from Wales that hopefully is easy to get hold of, I would love to know. Then from Scotland, I have read a few. So I have read Zadie Smith, several of them, and I feel a bit conflicted about Zadie Smith. I don't think I have loved any of her books. I think she's very interesting as a person and as an author, and I like some of the things that she's saying and some of the things that she's doing, but sometimes she also goes too far into the pretentious sometimes. So for me, it's a tricky one, but I have read her. I think my favorite is Autumn from her seasonal quartet. I didn't like the other ones as much, but Autumn was good. Then I have also read Shuggie Bain, which I also have a full review of, so I will link it down below. Then I have also read Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart, and I have a full review of that because it was for the Booker Prize. And I thought that was okay. I find the pacing quite slow, and I think that the characters were fine and the topics were fine, but they were kind of like, I have read that before and I don't think it added that much extra, that much new to the conversation. So to me it was just okay. Another one that I read for the Booker is Case Study by Grandma Horton Manette, and this was weird. So you were supposed to think that this book was like a book into a book kind of thing, like the author was part of the story because it had the same initials, and he was writing this book about psychology about this woman, and then this woman had some notebooks that they discovered, and kind of like the author then took these notebooks and made, so it kind of tries to make you think that it was a real story, but I never felt like it was a real story. Like the way that it was written was really clearly not a real story for me. Like people just don't write that way in notebooks, and people just don't write scientific discoveries like that. So to me it was just a failure in that sense. It just never made me think that it was a real thing. And the story is about this woman that her sister was going to the psychiatrist, and then she died, and the main protagonist, the sister, thinks that the psychologist kind of killed her sister, and he told her to kill herself or something. So she starts to go to the psychologist undercover, and then she does some crazy stuff, basically. And it was, I mean, I never found her any little bit of likable, which is okay, it doesn't have to be. But the way that she was acting and the things that she was doing was just, I don't know, it was just weird. So it was okay, but I didn't really like it that much. Then let's just move to the books that I have read for England. First of all, two of the most English sounding and English things that I have read, or at least British, is The Remains of the Days by Kazuo Ishiguro and Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. I think those are, like, for me, the epitome of Britishness and Englishness. Like, the way that it is written is like so over the top, polite, and like on this like straight way of things to do, and I don't know, it's very English, and I like it for that. Just for that, I think that Remains of the Day was a little bit too slow, so I understand why some people will not gel with it, but I did. And Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is a fantasy book, so it's like the most fantastical British thing ever. And I was very disappointed about the end. I think there were supposed to be more books, but they never came because Susanna Clarke got very sick. So that was a bit unsatisfying. But other than that, I think the book is it's very interesting and it's very British. So I just wanted to highlight that. Apart from that, I also I haven't dealt with all the Zadie Smiths that I have read, but Swing Time was my favorite. It's about these two girls that one is black and one is white, and they connect through dancing, and they live in the same area. And then you see how their lives develop after that when they grow up. And I thought it was very beautiful the way that they connected to each other, and it was just very interesting. So I would recommend. Then one that I have read for the Booker Prize and I have a review for is Who They Was by Gabriel Krauze, and it's kind of autofiction, so that Gabriel Krauze is from Polish origin, and he lived in one of the, let's say, ghetto areas of London, and he gets into the kind of mafias and things, and he relates his experience to that. And I think that the way he tells the story, the topics that he and the thoughts that he has are very insightful, but also the way that he writes it in this kind of dialect, so I 100% recommend the audiobook. it's just something different and something really special to me. So yes, I would recommend that a lot as well. So yeah, those are all the books that I wanted to talk about from England and from the Atlantic archipelago, and that concludes my videos for the Reader on the Wall project for Europe. The next place I'm going to be moving to is Africa, but yeah, so far this I think is going quite well. Let me know if you have any further recommendations from any of these places, or if you want to talk about any of the books that I have talked about, or any other books that you might want to talk about from these countries. And especially if you have recommendations from Wales, I would really appreciate. And until the next video,